welcome to Book 101 Review. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. She is the author of the book Forget Job Security, no other than Miss Dawn Rasmussen.
Thanks for having me, Daniel.
Welcome to Book 101, Miss Dawn. And can you please introduce more about yourself?
I am a career management coach and resume writer, and I love helping people with their careers and helping them understand how much value they bring to the table. So, my goal, especially with this book, is to really provide a good basis so that you can think a lot more proactively about your career. We get stuck in a job, but then what can we do to really manage our career, which is the bigger picture?
Definitely, Miss Dawn Rasmussen. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge to the world. So, what inspired you to write Forget Job Security?
That's a great question, Daniel. I ended up writing this book because I speak quite a bit at conferences, and my topics are usually career related. And afterwards, people would come up to me and they'd say, "Where can I buy your book?" and I was kind of thinking, well, I don't quite have a book, so maybe I should get going and start writing one. And it just came pretty quickly and easily to me. I pretty much got the whole book done in about a month, and it just flowed, and it was right. Very well received. People have found it to be extremely helpful in really guiding and managing their careers a lot more mindfully and intentionally.
Wow, interesting indeed. Miss Dawn, what does marketability mean in the context of career development?
Well, being marketable really means showing your value, and that's really important when people are trying to you really promote themselves, either to stay in a position, get promoted, or look for other work. Every employer, you have to think about business language, and at that point, you need to think about, okay, how am I going to show value to a potential employer? And so it's really your resume and all of your career materials are all about marketing yourself. And, if you've ever worked with marketing, you know that it's all about making the end user feel like they need to have your service or services or your product or your products. So it's kind of creating fear of missing out, the FOMO thing. It's like, oh my gosh, we better hire this person before somebody else snatches them up. So you telling the story and understanding what those control points are in your career can help you be more marketable and much more valuable to your potential target audiences.
Certainly. So, why do you believe job security is no longer a reliable concept in today's economy?
Well, I think it really kind of started with the Great Recession that we had in 2007, 2009. Through that whole time, employers were shedding workers, and I think a lot of people were in for a very rude awakening. They were in a company, they felt like they were part of the team, they felt like it was a family. I kept hearing that we're all a family, we all get along, I love them, they love me. And then all of a sudden they got laid off and they felt so completely betrayed. And one of the things that really is an important item to remember is that we are only in a job as long as we bring value to that company and we feel like we're being valued by that company. It's an implicit agreement. And so it is a business arrangement. So it's not a family. It's nice if you have that kind of rapport, but ultimately, you're there because of a business decision, because you think that they're going to pay you fairly for what you bring to the table, and they are going to hire you based on what they think the value you'll contribute. So it is a business decision. So that's something you always have to remember and never forget.
never forget, people. So, how has the job market changed in the recent years, and how should professionals respond?
The job market, I think the only thing that is constant is change, as they always say. And so when we think about where things are right now, it depends on what country you're in. Right now, I think you're in Canada, and the United States, as you
Yes,
likely know, is undergoing a lot of
of
turmoil right
changes.
now. And a lot of people are scared about their job. Yeah, yeah. And so, I think for the broader audience, I think, if you focus on what value you bring to the table, if you upskill and are continuously acquisitioning new skills, if you take stretch assignments, if you are well connected, you're going to keep your viability and your marketability up there. So it's really important to kind of think of it, it's you are marketing yourself. You are in charge of your career destiny. So it's going to be very important that you are always, not being egocentric, but you centric, thinking about, okay, if things are going poorly in your company, pay attention. What does your company stock look like? What does the economy look like? Are your customers coming in? I mean, right now they're in the tourism and hospitality industry. They're saying there's a 70%, 70% drop in Canadians coming to visit the United States. So that's going to be a huge a hit on the tech or on the hospitality sector. So we're going to see some contraction there. And similarly, there's some tariffs too. And so that will eventually have ripple effects throughout our almost all every single sector. So when you have cutbacks on consumer purchasing and consumption, that eventually will tie into product costs and manufacturing costs and less demand. And so that could also impact how many jobs are needed. So companies may start paring back again. So it's very like I said initially, the only thing that's constant is change. So your best way to be prepared for change is to make sure you are as upskilled as possible and as well connected as possible. So if something does happen, you're ready to go. And another thing you should think about is what kinds of other transferable skill sets might have. I mean, like I kind of mentioned the meetings and events industry, hospitality industry. When people, we had everything kind of shutting down with COVID. Obviously, events and conferences weren't happening until everybody shifted over to online things. So the hospitality meetings industry contracted a lot. Not as many things happening. So a lot of meeting planners were thinking, well, what do I do with myself? I can't have meetings because no one's meeting in person. So they were trying to figure out how can they change up their background, and being really clear on what those transferable skill sets will help you understand where you might take your skill sets and go somewhere else where the economy isn't hit as quite as hard on it. So some of those meeting planners became operations managers, they became program managers or project managers. So those are some other areas that you could transfer your skills. So that helped them.
Very well said, Miss Dawn. Beautifully articulated. So let's talk about on marketability. What are the top traits or skills that make someone highly marketable?
Well, I think people who do the best job of marketing themselves are the best connected people. And I want to caveat that with a little bit of caution as far as egotism. I mean, we talk a lot about LinkedIn, right? We all connect
Yes.
with each other on LinkedIn. Some people are just LinkedIn people, network builders, and there's not much quality there. They're just adding connections and not saying, I want to join and want you to join my network. That's nice, but what happens is if you go with LinkedIn's, standard kind of template response of like, I want to connect with you, you're missing an opportunity to start a conversation with the person you want to connect with. And it's really important if you're going to have a really truly robust and meaningful and purposeful networking, it's about building relationships. So instead of just using that standard response to connect with someone, you should write a personal note, start the conversation and then continue it. So that's where marketing really happens. Most jobs are found through someone you know. It's all about the hidden job market. So people know about jobs and people know people, and either it could be a job is referred to you, or you may hear about a job but then you know someone who can give you the scoop or make an internal recommendations for you on a job. So that network is your lifeline, absolutely.
Totally agree, Miss Dawn. So, are there specific industries where marketability is more critical than job security?
I think that's fair for all of them. Honestly, employers, you're gonna laugh, but it used to be um, probably the generations before you and I, they used to be in the same job for their entire lives, or the same company for their entire lives. They used to get the golden watch, here's your retirement gift, you've been here forever. And so, okay. Well, 20 years 40 years at the same company, that's almost kind of a liability now in today's job market. Employers are always looking for people who are upskilling. I mentioned that earlier, but they also like to keep adding new talent to the pool because it brings new ideas. And so you don't want to sound too archaic. And so um, being marketing yourself and being out there, and when you feel like you're stagnating, you already have stagnated. And so if you can feel it, probably your boss has seen that too. So being dynamic, the top traits of being really kind of a dynamic marketer is really being interested, being engaged, having taking initiative, having a lot of curiosity and interest, um, being very much, taking one for the team or being part of the team and collaborating are all things that are really top traits. Because if you're seen as kind of the good person, the good guy taking one for the team, then that builds up goodwill on your team. And just really thinking about how, maybe I've learned how to do this one particular skill set or task really well. And now I'm an expert in it, but maybe there's a new way to kind of think about, well, maybe is there a way that we can kind of shift gears and maybe do it even better? And so that's the continuous improvement mindset. So, there's always room for growth. And one of the things I coach people on to do is, if you've kind of reached your top echelon, but you still feel like there's might be some new territory to cover in your role, and maybe that's a potential growth, there are these mind stretch assignments that I like to say. So, for example, I'm a resume writer, I'm a career management coach, and someone said, "Oh, you should go to the Portland Digital Marketing Conference." So I was like, okay. I mean, that's not what I do. I mean, part of my job has something to do with that, but to go and just jump feet first into an area that maybe isn't quite as related to what I do in the scope of my work can maybe not necessarily give me new skills, but it will teach me to see a new way of seeing things, a new idea, a new application, a new way of doing business. So those are another way that you can grow, because you're like, oh, I never thought about doing that. Oh, wow, we can kind of marry these two things together and create something even better. And that's the exciting part.
Certainly. So, Miss Dawn, let's talk about the career strategy and mindset. How can professionals future proof their careers in a constantly evolving job market?
Well, one of the key things I coach people on is to think about um, staying informed. And that could be either just reading a lot, and not necessarily books, but just reading the news and reading trends, reading the industry publications, and going to industry conferences. A lot of times they will have cutting edge information there from speakers, and it could be new ideas, new applications, new software, new regulations that might impact the work that you do. So just constantly being informed and being able to take new ideas or examine them or research them and then incorporate them wherever you can in your work, but obviously working in tandem with your team and your supervisor too. So it's kind of being smart about it, keeping everything in alignment with the company's business objectives, of course.
So, Ms. Dunn, what advice would you give to someone who feels stuck or invisible in their current role?
Oh, that's a good one. Thanks for that question. If you're stuck in your current role, what I would suggest is to kind of take an introspective look. And sometimes we feel stuck because we don't feel like we're bringing much value, or we're dissatisfied. Perhaps we're not being paid what we think we're worth, or maybe we're just bored. So taking kind of inventory of what are you doing, what are you doing well, what are some areas where you need some improvement, or where are some areas you want to grow. So the easy answer here is you need to create basically a professional development and networking plan for yourself. And it's sort of like New Year's resolutions. We want to think about, okay, what do I need to learn this year? What do I want to do this year? How do I want to grow this year? Even me, I have my own company. I'm not trying to get hired by anybody, but I want to make sure I'm doing the best job for my clients, and also making sure that I'm staying current with everything. And so I sit down and say, okay, I'm going to go to a couple conferences this year. What organizations are all my memberships current, or at least relevant to where I want to go? Are they giving me return on investment? Am I putting enough energy to get that return on investment into it? So it's just really being honest with yourself, like, where do I want to go? And it might even be that your professional development plan will create action steps or stepping stones to your actual dream career or dream job, because you may have some skill sets now, but in order to get to your dream job, maybe you're going to say, okay, I'm going to take these other courses, so then I have those qualifications in place. Maybe I can use those new skill sets to actually have some projects under my belt, and then that will help build my pathway to where I want to go in terms of my dream job. It's pretty cool.
Pretty cool, Miss Dunn. So, can you share an example of someone who transformed their career by focusing on marketability?
Absolutely. It's like I have so many. I've worked with about 4,000 people. Let's see here. Well, okay. There was one, the true story. So I ended up going to an industry conference. And, if you've been to these big conferences, there's 5,000 people there. And they have a big meal function as part of the programming during the conference. So everybody comes into the big convention hall. There's all these, hundreds of tables, tabletops of 10 for lunch. It's in the big convention hall with a stage and everything. And so chance of you sitting down next to someone is pretty much zil. Well, okay, fine. So I walk up to a table, and there's a woman sitting there. I said, is the spot taken? And she said, no, please sit there. And so as I was sitting down, she was staring at my name badge, and she said, oh my God, are you Dawn Rasmussen? I'm like, yeah, like, is that a good thing or a bad thing? And she's like, you saved my life. I'm like,
Yes.
what? And she told me the story that we ended up working together on her resume. And just that process, I try to help coach people too, so they feel more confident. She was in a very bad place. She was in a work environment where her boss actually was not only mentally abusing her, but he actually threw her down some stairs. And so she was physically attacked by her boss. And so, it was bad. So she felt like her life was worth nothing. She felt like she had no value. She felt like she didn't have any prospects externally. So she felt trapped and absolutely beaten down, literally and figuratively. So we had worked together on her resume, and just kind of through those conversations and that coaching, she came to feel like, wow, I really have contributed to this company. I do have value. I have something I can take and package, and somebody else will see that. So that was the inception of her understanding what her marketability was. And so we had a delightful conversation at that table, and she just kept patting my hand and saying, oh, thank you so much. I'm like, well, I'm glad. And she found her dream job. that was the best part. So at the point where we
Awesome.
sat down at that lunch, she had found her dream job. So she's like, "Thank you, thank you, thank you." I'm like, you know, you are always that awesome, and that's the key. Everybody has value, absolutely, and it's just a matter of finding that and then owning it. That's the key thing.
Totally agree, Miss Dawn, and thank you for empowering us. So let's talk about the final thoughts. Do you believe schools and universities are preparing students adequately for a marketability Fox world?
Absolutely not.
No.
I think we have a problem, and I think this is common throughout North America. And I'm probably going to get in trouble for saying this, but um, there are a lot of colleges and university career centers. They are severely underfunded, so there's not a lot of resources for them. They are still teaching students how to write resumes or CVs from the 1970s. And unfortunately, in the real world, they're not well received. And the problem here is that it's not a marketable document. They're telling students you need to list every single job you've ever had. Well, that's not true in today's marketplace. And that's part of your marketing mentality. You have to give the employer what is relevant first. And the formatting that the colleges and universities are telling them to create their resume in is very outdated. They're saying, "Oh, put your education first." It's like employers in the real world, in the business world, they're like, "That's great that you know that, but I care more about any relevant experience." So don't tell me you worked at Baskin and Robbins if you actually had an internship or volunteered in a role that is relevant to the role that they're hiring for. That's what they want to know. And the education is important. It just goes after work experience. And so I think that because college presidents and boards and budgets and financial things, they don't fund the college and university career centers, that there's a lot of outdated information, and there are organizations like college career directors and things like that that they can go to conferences, but they're kind of insular. They're not including HR people, they're not including business people, so it's still repeating the same thing over and over again in this little circle. So I think we do have a problem. Conversely, there is kind of a trend I've seen that there's a lot of people coming out into the workforce from schools that they think that they're really qualified for things. In fact, they are not. So we kind of have to have a balance of owning what you actually can do and understanding when you're not actually qualified to do something. So it's a tricky thing. And I think we need to do a better job of helping students navigate that a little bit better.
Certainly. I hope they are listening right now. So, Miss Dawn, before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, Food 101, in its fifth season, people. Fifth season with Chef Alessandro, one of the specialty chef in one of the five-star hotel in downtown Toronto. Please do listen to our latest episode. We are talking or we are reading our letter senders all over the world. So please do listen Food 101 wherever you listen your podcast. So Miss Dawn, if you could give your younger self one piece of a career advice based on this book, what would it be?
Believe in yourself, understand your value, and never give up on your dreams. That's kind of three pieces of advice, but they all hook together.
Certainly, Miss Dawn Rasmussen. Thank you so much for sharing Forget Job Security to the world. So, can you please invite our listeners to support this book or your books?
Absolutely. You can go find it on Amazon.com. So it's right there and ready to go.
Yes, people, let's support Miss Dawn Rasmussen because if you support her, more and more and more empowering books like this to come. So, Miss Dawn, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Daniel.
Morrigan people, see you soon.